Well, it's great to be here. Monday edition of Business Nigeria. I am Tolu Lokpe Ogunjobi. Well, a great weekend I'm sure everyone had, but it's time to talk business everywhere. The stock exchange and of course trading is even on the Broad Street and Wall Street as we speak now, and figures trickling in, but we'll keep bringing you up to speed with that. First, let's bring you up to speed with some stories making headlines in the world of business. Well, criticisms against huge debt burden on the Nigerian economy has not deterred government from sourcing new loans. Now, the federal government has confirmed it would soon be heading to the international financial market to raise 2.8 billion US dollar in Eurobond to fund capital projects in the current budget. Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed said the country still has significant grounds to borrow since the debt profile stays at about 3% to GDP. Well, she said the upcoming bonds would be raised within the 2018 budget framework and approved targets. Well, the 2.8 billion bond proceeds, she explained, will be used to finance capital projects, of course, in the 2018 budget. The depreciation of the Naira in the parallel market and investors and exporters window last week is expected to persist this week. Last week, the Naira depreciated by 1 Naira in the parallel market. In the I and E window, that's import and export window, the indicative exchange rate crossed the 364 Naira per dollar for the first time this year. On the other hand, data from the Central Bank of Nigeria shows that external reserve declined to $43.35 billion. That's from $44.31 billion as at the end of September. Well, that's translating to a decline of 955 million US dollars. The reserve have been declining steadily since July the 5th, when it peaked at 47.80 billion US dollars. The federal government has announced December the 31st, 2019 as date for final performance review of the privatized electricity distribution companies. Director General of BPE, Alex Oko, says the 5-year performance agreement for all discos, with the exception of Kaduna Disco, became effective January the 1st, 2015. Now, the Bureau assured the public that the relevant agencies of government are conducting periodic review of the performance of the discos under the new management. Of course, the core investors, with a view to evaluating the achievements of the terms of covenants agreed with the federal government. The Central Bank of Nigeria has responded to the International Monetary Fund's proposition on judicious use of nations' external reserves to build buffers against the shock of rising interest rates in the monetary policy normalization regime of the United States. CBN's Governor Godwin Emefiele, while speaking during the just concluded World Bank IMF 2018 meeting in Bali, Indonesia, said its policy preference for now is to maintain exchange rate stability. Well, the IMF head, Emerging Economies Regional Studies Division, European Department, Anna Leah, charged emerging economies, including Nigeria, to build our external reserves as buffers against the normalization policies. But Nigeria's Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed has said the country has no plans to review its tax laws. Responding to the International Monetary Fund's recommendation that Nigeria increases its revenue through tax, Zainab said right now the country is not planning to review upwards taxes in Nigeria. The minister added the government is making efforts to ensure that tax evaders are brought back into the tax net. On debt challenges, the minister also reassured that the country does not have a debt problem because at the ratio of 3% to GDP. She says there is nothing to worry about with this present threshold. Well, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank 2018 annual meeting has ended in Bali, Indonesia. The week-long event attracted top economic leaders, ministers and governors around the world, led by Jim Yong Kim and Christine Lagarde, World Bank Group President and IMF boss, respectively. The summit also had in attendance the Nigerian Economic Management Team. The rundown of issues discussed at the summit as it affects Nigeria includes 2018 economic growth. IMF, through the Deputy Director of Research Department, Gian Maria Milesi Ferretti, announced a reduced economic growth in Nigeria. Well, that's for Nigeria. The figures released for Nigeria has actually changed. It is expected that the economic projection will slow to 1.9% from 2.1% as earlier projected. On Human Capital Index, the World Bank ranked Nigeria 152 out of 157 countries. Out of consolation, Nigeria isn't the only African country caught in the red zone. The Human Capital Index is the first of its kind by the World Bank to rank selected countries based on quality of health and education infrastructure. Commenting on the low performance, World Bank President emphasized the need to develop human capital above hard infrastructure. The World Bank said it is time for African countries, particularly Nigeria, to intensify efforts on human capital investments by way of quality education and effective health system. Similarly, IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde described the overdependence of Nigeria on oil revenue as unhealthy. She said a tight monetary policy support in domestic revenue and structural reforms will help shift focus from oil revenue. Well, to look at this, I have the Chief Executive Officer of Cowrie Assets, Johnson Chukwu, who joins me now via Skype and also live from our Abuja studio. I have an economist, Ayo Oyalowo. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on Business Nigeria this Monday.
My pleasure.
Let me start from Lagos.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Chukwu, looking at this, well, let's say conclusions and recommendations after this meeting. First, starting with economic projection of Nigeria, IMF is now saying that we should look at 1.9% away from 2.1%. This is a shift from what they said. What is responsible for this shift in projection?
Of course, they've looked at your first half performance. And if you look at your performance, GDP performance in the first half of the year, the first quarter we did 1.95%, which was below the 2.1% they projected. The second quarter we ended up with 1.5%, which is far below the 2.1% they projected. And there's nothing going on today that will give anybody the confidence that the GDP will begin to grow about 3.4% to achieve an average growth rate of about 2.1%. In fact, I believe even the 1.9% they are projecting is quite optimistic. If you look at what the CBN governor said when he was making the pronouncement at the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting, he said that the projection by CBN is that the economy will grow at 1.75%, which is still below the 1.9% that IMF is projecting. So I actually think that if we achieve a 1.5% average growth in 2018, that will be materially above what the economy is showing today. And you will agree with me that the government has taken a side of economic management. What we are now focusing on is on politics. And at serious periods like this, you do not expect that economy will just begin to grow on its own. Beyond that, there are several factors that are impacting negatively on the economic growth rate. We saw massive flooding in the north central, which is the food belt of the country. Growth in agriculture sector has very slowed to 1.19%. So with what we've seen in terms of flooding, you could actually see agriculture growth rate slowing below the 1.19% we saw in the second quarter. And agriculture accounts for about 22% of the GDP. So if agriculture slows further, then you're going to see a further decline in GDP growth rate. If you factor those in, then a 1.9% growth that IMF predicts looks quite optimistic.
Great. Now let me throw this to Ayo in Abuja. Ayo, I know we've always talked about this, and you've identified with the efforts made by this administration to actually improve agriculture. That's talking about non-oil sector. But still, IMF is coming to tell us that the growth remains fragile, dropping from even 2.1 to 1.9. So what's happening? Something seems not to be right.
Well, I thank you very much. First and foremost, I will not say something is not right. Generally, you need to understand that it's not that easy to diversify a mono economy. the agriculture that is being pushed forward has been a positive. But if you remember just a few weeks ago, we remember that the chief of the tax body in Nigeria said something clearly that we have about 6,000 billionaires, or is it millionaires, who have not been paying their taxes. So we cannot run an economy when people don't pay their tax. So aside from looking at agriculture, we have to increase the tax net. We don't have to follow the prescription of increasing tax burden on the already burdened Nigerians. Rather, we should widen up our tax net so that those people who have not been captured will be captured, and then they will begin to pay their taxes. So for me, while we are focusing on agriculture, we should also focus on expanding our tax net so that we will have more people paying taxes. That way, you will earn more revenue, and then you will not burden the already burdened taxpayers by increasing from 5% the VAT to 10%. That for me will be a bit too tough on some people. So, and then we need to look at, the VAT was introduced so that these things can be handled. But it seems some people are just living above the law, and the law should be allowed to take its course. People should pay taxes. We all know the British economy basically run mostly on taxation. So tax should be broadened in the sense of bringing in more people into the tax net, and then ensuring that people pay. Now, talking about agriculture, we have made a lot of progress coming from where we were to where we are. But I keep saying something, and I will not stop saying it until I see it working clearly, and that is the fact that we must begin to expand our agriculture from just production of the raw material, which is farming and harvest, to adding value to make it a final product. Let me say, for instance, a cocoa, for instance, you don't just harvest cocoa and sell to them in Holland and then they will become richer than you are, but rather what they will have done with the cocoa in Holland, we should get to the point where we can do the same thing here in Nigeria. Our industry must run, and we should be able to feed our industry with raw materials that we make here. That way we will make more money. So agriculture is not doing badly, as it were. But the problem with agriculture right now is that we have not been able to get to that point where we can add value to whatever we produce. So those are the areas we need to look at: taxation and value adding to our agricultural products.
Okay, Johnson, now let's go to Human Capital Index, which Nigeria is now ranked 152 out of 157 countries. Now, what do you think we need to do? Talking about building capacity is something that has been identified that we need to really shift towards. It's even said like we should human capital above hard infrastructure. What's your comment on this?
Components of improving human capital index is the quality of education and quality of healthcare, and availability of both. Today, we have the largest number of out-of-school children at 13.2 million globally. Today, we understand we have 87 million very poor, extremely poor, out of a population of about 192 million. That's about 45% of the population are in extreme poverty. Today, we still have a lot of communicable diseases that have been eradicated in other parts of the world. We still do not have situation like you have in other countries where when a child is born, by the time the child gets up to school age, the society, the government will look for the child. And if the child is not found, the government will look for the parents, because that child is automatically enrolled in school from the point the birth certificate is issued. And the government will look for that child. We need to implement, for us to improve on our human capital index, we need to improve on the availability, coverage, and access to education. We must implement the 9 years of compulsory education in the whole this country. And that's a starting point. Then we need to look at our primary health care standard. We need to look at our secondary health care standard. Those are the two critical components of the health industry that are important in determining the human capital index. Until we improve on those things, we are not going to improve on our standing. And it's actually embarrassing. Out of a number of 157 countries, our ranking is only better than 5 countries. For me, it insults my sensibilities. And I hope the government feels the same way. And we're going to do things to improve on that. It is not impossible we can do that. And look at countries like India. They've done so much to improve the human capital index. I was listening to radio today, and they said that about 400 million Indians about 10 years ago did not have access to, only about 450 million Indians had access to decent toilet facilities. Today, they have brought that to 98% of the Indian population. That's a country with a population of 1.2 billion. So there's no reason why we can't improve our healthcare standard. There's no reason why we should improve our educational coverage and the quality.
All right, Johnson, before I go to Ayo with my next question, I'd like to do a follow-up now. Some of these things you identified, or these issues you identified, has been on ground even before the Buhari-led administration. I think we need to get that right, because, you know, when we want to look at some efforts made by them to address some of these challenges, what would you say?
Well, like you rightly pointed out, not some of them, all of them have been on the ground before the government came in. But the government, therefore, has seemed not to have achieved so much of successful results. Take, for instance, Nigeria was started as having 10 million out-of-school children. Today, we have 13.2 million. That's 32% increase over what we inherited. Take, for instance, the issue of human capital, adult health care standard. I'm not sure Nigeria has recorded any improvement. Some of the medically eradicatable diseases seem to have come back into the country. I'm not saying the government is not doing much, but I'm saying the results are not quite showing what the government is doing. The issue of poverty level, it's 7 million people. The issue of unemployment growing from about 9.8% to about 18.8%, those are not good report cards for the government. So I think it should be a wake-up call for the government. I'm not a critic, but I am a Nigerian, and it's my lighting in self-interest, and just like every one of us, that we compel those in government around levels to look at this data, this report card, and do all that is possible to improve on them. It is not the government that created it, but the government has a responsibility to improve on those things. All
right, then. Well noted. Ayo, let me throw that back to you now. Ayo, you've talked about the non-oil sector, how we can get better, agriculture, expanding the tax net, and all of that, which are efforts which we know has been being made and being worked upon. But IMF also identified the tight monetary policy and also issues around debt. I don't know what your comments will be with regards to that.
Let me first and foremost correct a mistake here. The out of children's school, the figure that has been touted, I don't know why people keep making the same mistake. That report was for 2015 and before. So people need to clear that. There has been no new figures yet. So I want to assume that with the homegrown school feeding that this government has embarked upon, I think the figure may not be the same anymore. So we need to clear that. And secondly, in terms of the unemployment rate, you see, people keep making the mistake that unemployment is increasing. No. Our population is growing faster than we are developing. So we are having more people leaving universities, leaving schools, joining the labor market. So it is not like jobs are closing down because there are even not enough jobs already. But we are adding more people. So we have our own challenge as people. We need to deal with that. Now, that is to quickly clear some of the fallacies. Now, in terms of borrowing and the tight fiscal policies, the truth is CBN is doing what they think is best under the circumstances that we'll find ourselves. That's number one. Then number two, from what the minister said, we have the latitude. The latitude to borrow more if we want to. But I would say we need to be careful because we have to grow our revenue stream more, so that we'll be able to handle the repayment of this. So I don't think we have so much problem in terms of borrowing. When you look at our GDP to debt ratio, it is not bad. But we have to be still careful. I think the oil prices are rising gradually. And when you look at the budget, the budgeted figure and what we are selling now, I think if we sit down and manage our economy better, I think things are not as bad as we are looking at. The unfortunate problem we are now grappling with is politics. They have started their politicking, and therefore a lot of statements are being made to raise unnecessary tension here and there. So I think politicians need to be careful so as not to jeopardize our lives because of politics. Things are not as bad. CBN has done the best in terms of monitoring the system, monetary policies. And we are not in a bad place, as it were. In terms of the revised growth, we must understand that politics is what is slowing it down. So those are some of the challenges we have to grapple with the politics that we are running.
All right,
so,
all right.
Well, it's unfortunate, but we just have to live with those things.
All right. Let me go back to Mr. Chukwu. Mr. Chukwu, now let's look at the over-dependence on crude oil proceeds. Already, even the oil companies are already coming out to complain that they cannot have new investments because funds are not coming in from international players and both local players. That's talking about the effects or the negative effects with regards to the oil and gas sector. Now, how far have we really gone? Crude oil now sells close to $90 per barrel. Where are we going? That's high above the benchmark price rate for our budget. What are the positives and what are the negatives in all of this, Mr. Chukwu?
Well, the positive is that we have an improved earnings. Our terms of trade has improved and our balance of trade has improved. It has also strengthened the capacity of the government to meet its funding obligations. So if you look at the litany of a long list of positives, I mean, we've seen the reserve at 43 billion today is largely because oil price has remained quite strong. Because if you look at the exit, the outflow from foreign portfolio investments, we would have had a reserve that is far below 43 billion. But because our balance of trade is quite positive, and that's complementing the reserve. So in terms of the crude price, it's quite positive. But the only negative one can draw from it, which it's at the issue of strategy of government, is that we must not relax, we will not relax, and we must not relent on our oars to diversify the economy. What has happened in the past is that whenever oil price becomes quite strong, Nigerian government, previous government, will take their sight off the need to diversify the economy. We should know that oil may not sustain its current strong price, but beyond that, we are also seeing a shift in technology that could, in the not too distant future, make fossil fuel not a critical energy source in the world. We've seen a lot of improvement in alternative energy sources, including battery-powered vehicles. Today, we have seen some vehicle manufacturers that are phasing out diesel vehicles. So, and if you go to Western countries, a lot of these vehicles are either using hybrid energy source or they are actually running on battery. So we must recognize that we must see the improvement in wind and other energy sources and realize that this current crude price may not sustain for too long. So the government must do everything to diversify the economy. And that's the only thing I could say is a negative. But in the real sense of it, it's just a call for government to remain steadfast in its drive to diversify the economy.
All right, there. Ayo, your last word on this topic of discourse. Government needs to remain steadfast, like Johnson has said. What's your last?
Well,
what's your last?
I quite agree with the other speaker. Our diversification must not be relented upon. We must not relax because we have suddenly we are lucky now. The price of oil is very strong in the international market. We are hitting $80-something per barrel, which has not happened in the last four years or thereabouts. So it's a strong positive. But like I always say, it's an opportunity for us to save more and spend less from oil while we are focusing directly on what we are focused on, which is diversifying the economy away from just oil. And like he rightly said, a lot of alternative sources are being sought by other countries. Therefore, oil prices may not be sustainable in terms of having a high oil price over the long period of time. So we must not relent in our drive towards diversifying our Nigerian economy. So I think we have been fortunate because of the current oil price, but we must not close our eyes to we must not drop the ball because we're still facing this challenge. Like we all know, oil prices are cyclic. They're cyclic. You never can tell when it will just happen, bam, and then you are back to square one. So we must not let that catch us unawares as usual. So yes, we are lucky, but we must not be Yeah, we must not go to sleep on our horse.
Ayo Yalowo there live from our Abuja studios there, giving us his views. Thank you very much. And also, Johnson Chukwu is the Chief Executive Officer, Cowrie Assets Limited.
Thank you
joining us live here from Lagos, Southwest Nigeria. Thank you, gentlemen, for this Monday morning, afternoon, I beg your pardon, giving us your insights into the IMF's decision after this very important meeting, IMF World Bank meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. Well, before we go, let's tell you that crude oil prices at the various market centers trade mix on Monday as product users move to dumping price jumps. The Brent crude in the London market attracts more than $80 per barrel on the back of anxiety over possible sanctions and boycott of Saudi crude by major buyers. Diplomatic crisis between Saudi Arabia and Turkey over the disappearance of a journalist holds prospects for global sanctions as world leaders continue to condemn the crime. Well, looking at the crude oil price, is it a blessing or a curse for us in this part of the world? We'll look at that before the end of the week. That's our show. Thank you very much for watching. I am Tolulope Ogunjobi. Let's do this again tomorrow, by God's grace.